What's up, guys? Thomas Mott here, joined by Josh Davis. Welcome to the Wednesday Link Live on what turned out to be, Josh, the final day of Eagles training camp. It was literally yesterday. We were on here getting ready for training camp. Now training camp is officially over. There's a lot to break down. How are you doing here on another Wednesday evening?
I'm doing great. It is, to your point, it is strange because the fact that we are through training camp and there's been spells where it's like, okay, it took forever to get there. And then all of a
Right.
sudden, as everyone, knows and realizes it happens every single year. We're like, can training camp just get here? Can training camp just get here? And lo and behold, we're 17 days, 16 days away from the opener. So Brazil's going to be here before you know it. And there's still questions. I mean, even though that training camp is winding down, we've got a lot of questions within the roster, which is going to be exciting, certainly with the last preseason game coming up and some guys that need to play their way onto the roster.
I wonder how many actual bubble players there really are right now because, there's 90-plus players currently on the roster. You cut down to 53. A lot of these guys are going to get cut. It's just basically a guarantee no matter what you do in Saturday afternoon's preseason game. But there are still a couple, I think, we're kind of teetering on, and we'll obviously get into those. Still, though, it's going to be a fascinating Tuesday, I believe, is the cut day. And so early next week, you know exactly who's on the roster. They'll still get 15, 16. Is it up to 18 practice squad players? It's, somewhere in the teens there in terms of how many people are going to stay in Philadelphia without being on the active roster. And it's going to be a lot of fun. Like you said, it took forever to get to this point, and now 16 practices later, and we officially have the end of training camp. And we officially had the end of the Jalen Hurts interception streak today, Josh. Such incredibly massive news. It's just crazy that this has become its own little thing. 305 passes without a pick. Eagles put it up on Twitter. You all saw it. What did you think? Jalen Hurts' first interception.
I mean, honestly, I'm glad that he threw an interception.
I am too.
Because, we just needed to move beyond this. And for those that would say, like, oh, it's a jinx, it's a curse, or what, you could say that argument. You could say to the point of it was meaningless. It didn't really stand for much. I do understand, okay, cool, he's been sharp. But come on now, really? I mean, it's a training camp. And the funniest thing, too, is like watching or seeing the reporters, ask some of the players afterwards, like, hey, what do you think about the record? What do you think about Jalen not throwing interceptions? And almost, although I will say there were a few players that gave a different reaction, but almost all the players was like, cool. Like, I mean, good for him. Yeah.
Care.
But like, who cares? And it's like, what? I think I saw Elliot's tweet of like a fake hanging in the rafter. For it, so I'm like, okay. I mean, he got a lot of publicity for it. Good for him. You appreciate, having reporters at camp because not everybody gets to see it, obviously. So we're trying to just read between the lines and figure out what's going on. It's a very minor thing. The takeaway from it is that Jalen is looking good. He's taking ownership of the offense. But yes, I think it's good to, get that out of the way. I like the back and forth also for people that didn't see it of Slay, being like, oh yeah, I bait Jalen. Like I knew that was happening, so you got Slay making plays out there. And then of course, Jalen, obviously the return from that saying, yeah, it's about damn time that he intercepted one. So it's whatever. I don't know. People make something of it. Not a big deal. It's not a big deal.
Yeah, much to do about nothing. And the funny thing about Slay saying, yeah, I know how to bait Jalen. Well, you didn't bait him for 305 other throws earlier this year. The bigger takeaway today in terms of the whole Jalen Hurts stuff that I saw literally nobody talk about was Jalen actually admitted that he was injured last year. Like, it was in the press conference halfway through. He said, I was a lot more banged up than I let on. I told you guys, stop asking me about it, but I was really banged up. I feel great right now. That's the real takeaway. I was going back and watching, I think it was the Dolphin game, the Sunday night game that you and I were both at, the highlights of that yesterday. I don't know. I was bored in the afternoon. I was watching the highlights, and every single Jalen run looked like he was running at half speed. Looked like he had some sort of weird limp that was very, almost unnoticeable. But if you're a true Eagles fan, you could tell. That's all gone now, and he's so healthy and feels so good. It just the whole vibes around him and just in general, even during his press conferences with the media, personnel he doesn't want to talk to, it seems so different from last year. And I know that Nick Wright, I talked about him on my show today. He's a known Eagles hater, but he's saying it's a bad thing to throw no picks. And while I can tend to agree, just to the point that you probably should be throwing some interceptions in training camp, I do not take Jalen Hurts only throwing one the past 16 practices as a bad thing. I see it as Hurts has progressed dramatically, got the one interception out of the way, way we can go ahead and move on, and I think he's going to light up this Packer defense, which is going to be very hard to do, but possible to do 16 or whatever days from now.
Yes, it absolutely will. And that's what we're going to get to see, right? Because on one hand, it's like, cool, great, you're doing it in practice, but it really is meaningless. Like, talk is cheap, even practice within, reps and stats and all this other stuff. It doesn't really matter too much until we get into the standpoint of, okay, regular season, are you going to show up and do that night one, Friday night in Brazil? So that's what I'm excited to see. But I do have a lot of hope. I know that a lot of people do. And you see what Kellen Moore is doing, the different nuances of the offense, the playmakers there. But yeah, I'm super excited. Also, by the way, shout out to the rest of the chat here for hanging out.
What's up, guys?
See everybody's comments and everything there. Thomas, I don't know if this is a burner of yours. It's a different last name, but Thomas Arellano, I believe. I could be mispronouncing. Besides, I enjoy both of y'all's YouTube channels with all the up-to-date information. I don't go to any other channel but y'all's. Thanks, guys. Fly Eagles Fly. We appreciate that. Also, Thomas and I guess probably a good plug time for this, but the Fantasy Football League.
Yes.
So for people that were asking and questions on that, there is more details as you see in the description. If you joined very early, mine might not have been in there. So it is, if you refresh it, I'll also post there in the comment section for those as well. But just details if you want to get in on the league. I know it's pricey, so some people may not be able to totally understand, but we did this last year, had a lot of hype on it. So it is official. And we will be drafting a week from tonight during the Wednesday link. There you go.
Yeah, so last year we did 2 fantasy leagues. I was in one 16-team league. Josh was in the other. But then Josh and I couldn't be in the same league together. So we're going to start off right now opening up basically 14 slots for one ESPN typical standard PPR fantasy football league. It's expensive, $105. You got to Venmo that too at the Philly Special or even my description box. My Venmo's there. Give us your email as well. That way we can send you the link to join the league. But we make it expensive because we want real people to do it. We don't want you to sign up and then miss the draft and then, forget to sub players in. This is high stakes fantasy football. We had 2 leagues last year. People loved it. If we get enough people to sign up, we can make a second league. That's TBD. But right now, to lock yourself in, be one of the first 14 people to Venmo myself or Josh Davis, the 105 with your email. The draft is next Wednesday night, so a week from tonight, August, whatever that is, 28th, I think.
28th.
It'll be at 7:45 Eastern time. So during the live show, we're going to be drafting and still talking, and that's when it's going to go down. So if you want to get into it, this is how you do it. We'll talk more about it, of course, later on for people who join us later. We'll mention it on our shows. But Josh and I are both in this league. So you'll be playing against me, Josh, and 14 other, whatever it is, diehard Eagle fans.
Yes, and Tyler, I see your comment, 105 sheesh. It is a lot of money, and that's because we want to take your money. I won last year. I'll just go ahead and say that, and it was very fun. So
I did not. I finished second to last, so not fun for me.
Yeah.
Now, the price is to make sure that people actually play. It's the incentive part.
Right. We do want people to have something in it. It is ESPN Fantasy. Jay Sanchez is asking Zell. We can figure something out. If you want to email me, the Philly Special Show at gmail.com, we can figure something out. If you don't have Venmo for some reason, that's fine. No offense. But yeah, we can work Zell. So just email me, like I said, the Philly Special Show at gmail.com, and we'll figure something out.
There you go. All right, we'll talk more about it later on. I'll keep this up on the screen, though I did see a super chat, so I'm going to get the super chat here as well. But it was a bunch of fun last year, and it's a 16-team league. It's very hard to draft, so it's really meant for serious fantasy football players, unless you're Josh and you get all the good players and win and get all the money. So the goal is for Josh not to win this year.
Thank you, sir. That was
anybody
a very good backhanded compliment on that one. The goal. It's definitely the goal. Anybody but Josh wins. Except if you're Josh, because he just got lucky to it. So
your team was so good last year.
Raheem Mostert in the 12th round, and then picking up Kyron Williams off the waivers, that's what'll do it for you. So I won't deny that.
Darius says, if you guys don't fill the league, will you decrease the price? Maybe, but we filled 32 slots last year at this price. So the odds of us filling, and our channels are much larger. So the odds of us filling this year, I would say, is very likely. So we'll just go definitely with that. We got a super chat here from Not Your Typical Leo. He says, with the 5, no question, go Birds. Love both of y'all's shows. I literally look for your videos daily. We appreciate that. That is very, very
Thank
kind.
you.
We appreciate you guys watching our shows, even though, we're doing shows every day at training camp. There's not a ton of new news every day, although we tried to make them as interesting as possible while covering exactly what was happening. And the views were up there for both of us. And we think you guys liked it and appreciated it. So, we appreciate that. And now we transition into actual football, which is going to be a lot more fun. So, should be a good time there. Emily Garcia said, I read about a Saquon injury scare. What happened? No injury scare. I think the story today is that he had a load management day, that he was basically just resting. He did individual drills with pads on, did not do team drills. But yesterday he was spotted laying on the ground, getting his lower back and legs rubbed out. I assume he was probably just sore. Maybe he was cramping. Didn't go on the injury report. He still signed autographs. He's fine today. That is basically the overall story there. He's totally fine.
Yes, and you see some stuff there, and I totally understand, by the way, because I think that everyone has the same feelings. Like, oh my gosh, Saquon Barkley showing something to the lower back. He's taken off to the sideline, getting looked at. But yes, the difference, as with a lot of this, is sometimes you see a player go into the facility, or you leave the practice field. That's a little bit more serious than not. I'm totally fine. I'll also just say this, and appreciate Eagle Nation saying appreciate y'all. Y'all keep me informed. That means a lot. We do appreciate it. Also, with the guys themselves, I mean, I don't know. Mekhi Becton, like, he came back, but then he was asked in the I guess sidebar conversation, wouldn't really call it press conference, but the interviews with the media, and he's like, no, just some general soreness. That's fine. Hopefully that's the case. They've kind of been on a little pitch count and monitoring something with the right leg there. Who knows what it is, but it's nothing drastic, nothing crazy on that side. But the right guard spot continues to be just kind of, I don't know if it's cursed. I don't know if it's, we've got so many injuries because you had Tyler Steen, you have Mekhi Becton and Trevor Keegan, who did not practice today.
Right.
So hopefully that is nothing serious. But yeah, it's just, you go from one level to the next. That is more of a concern than, like we were saying, with Saquon Barkley situation, more of load management, maybe a very, very minor something with just even tightness in his lower back. And yeah, I mean, if you got a guy like Saquon Barkley, why on earth are you even possibly chancing it to say, oh, hey, you had a back tightness yesterday? Now you're good. I mean, plus he was out signing autographs afterwards. So if it was any sort of injury, as great as he is with the fans, it would be, all right, I'm headed straight into the locker room to take care of that. So he'll be all right, but totally understand the concern.
The crazy one with a 5, appreciate that. Been a subscriber to both of you guys since the Chiefs game last year. That feels like forever ago, and yet it's like not even a year ago. Never been more hyped for a season. How many yards Saquon getting week 1? I'll be honest too. I can't remember a season where I was this hyped, because the 2020, the 2017 season had hype around it, but I don't think many of us thought Super Bowl. Like, it was until you got the season going and you realized, oh, this is a Super Bowl caliber team, then you got very, very excited. I think 2023 did have a lot of hype because we were coming off the Super Bowl in 2022. But I think this roster is better than the 2022 team overall. I think that in the end, we'll see that it is much better. Saquon is a big part of that. I can't remember. I mean, the Dream Team year, I know people hate bringing that up, but I was, very young. I was watching a lot of Dave Spadero's coverage on Eagles.com with Eagles Live and stuff like that. I was very hyped for that year. Yeah, exactly. Back when we actually could. That was a hype year. They were not that good this year, but yeah, it's going to be interesting. Saquon, I'm going to answer this by saying Saquon's going to be very hard to pass up on in my fantasy leagues. I'm in my own personal one that my wife won last year. She won last year, and it's like all Josh is in that one too. She's incredible.
Did you call her lucky also, or are you just calling me lucky?
Well, I try not to give her credit, because let me tell you, when she wins, because she got second 2 years ago and she won this past year, and I never hear the end of it. So when she's around, I pretend like she just gets lucky, but she's actually pretty serious about it. But it'd be very hard to not take Saquon Barkley early on in my fantasy football drafts, because I truly believe that he is set up to have an incredible season. I mean, an incredible amount of touches, 1,500 yards, Josh. It's going to be hard to pass up on him.
It is, but I mean, are you talking about like first overall, or what number are we at, over under?
What if you're 7th, right? Because Tyreek Hill has to go, Justin Jefferson has to go. Obviously, someone's going to take Breece Hall early, and Christian McCaffrey. So that's like 4, 5-ish. After that, do you take him ahead of A.J. Brown? That's going to be a very interesting thing, because A.J. is a top receiver. Saquon's a top running back. Running backs tend to kind of be a little better in the end. It's going to be tough. It'll be very, very tough.
Well, the fact that you bring this up too, I've got another underdog league that's going on, and the person there took Saquon literally number 1 overall. So it even blows out the argument. I wouldn't take him 1 overall, but yeah, I mean, he's gonna be good. The problem that I have, or the question that I have, is like there will probably be some of this load management situation, and that's I think that's smart. It's understandable. That's what you really want if you're an Eagles fan, or I don't know if you're hoping for him to be fresh for the playoffs. We should say that. So, like, during the regular season, there may be games where it's like, oh, hey, Saquon touched the ball 12 times, touched the ball 15 times. Like, you didn't need it, right? Like, you get up pretty quickly. Yeah. Kenny Gainwell or Will Shipley is your guy that's just going to run out the clock, and you're not going to have to use Saquon. That hopefully will happen. But I don't know. It kind of goes back and forth because you do have all these weapons. You do have this offensive line that Saquon's never had in his entire career. So I understand the hype, and like, yes, I think he's going to be a lot more efficient, but right. I just don't know if he's going to get the bulk of carries for me personally, even as much as I want to, like, Eagles fan, Saquon fan, making this thing happen for this season. Like, I'd have to, if I'm going an Eagle, I think it's got to be AJ Brown. You got to take AJ first, and then I don't know, at some point after that, not too much longer, but then maybe taking a Saquon. Right. It's tough, but I feel like that's where I'm at. Because if you ask me right now, season-wise, total, I feel like Saquon's going to be 1,300 rushing yards and, 8 touchdowns, 10 touchdowns, somewhere around there. And I don't know, necessarily passing numbers. I think he will be involved a decent amount, but is that 7 overall? That's where I'm kind of going back and forth on. But it's the beauty of the offense because you don't need him.
All right, so you just don't take him, leave him to me in our fantasy league. That's fine.
That's fair.
You can lose. That shouldn't be a problem.
Take him at 7.
By the way, so first off, this is my wife. She's saying wrong. I got second 2 years in a row, and then first last year. See what I said? Like, it's insufferable because she wins all the time. I won in 2019, but that was a long time ago. And also for my fantasy league that my wife and Josh are both in, we have a loser punishment. Last place has to film one of those really cringy Instagram full day in the life and then post it to their Instagram, which if you or have Instagram at all and you've seen those stories, they are pretty so cringy and so awful, and that's what you have to do. So that's going to be the punishment. Hopefully my wife has to do that. That'd be very fun. I might share it on the channel if she has to do that. She's probably mortified to do it, but we got to punish her. If she gets last place this year, I mean, she's never going to hear the end of it. So very important. Very important.
I am actually, it's cringy because sometimes that's the one where I'm like, it's hard to watch other people's because it's like, oh my gosh, it's just brutal. But
today I woke up and brushed my teeth, and then I made breakfast. It's like, oh my gosh, but that's the loser. And come on, let's have a punishment. So, okay, I want to quickly get into a little bit of training camp, looking ahead to roster cuts happening in really just a couple of days after Saturday's preseason game. We can talk about Saturday's preseason game too. Is there anybody, Josh, that you feel is truly on the bubble right now who actually has a chance to make the final 53 but also be cut? Because practice squad is one thing, right? Like, Will Greer is going to be on the practice squad because they need a practice squad quarterback. He's been in camp all year. It's a no-brainer, right? He's not going to make the roster. But I get into this wide receiver 3 area, which you and I have talked about a lot the past couple of days. They're probably keeping 5. And if you go down the list, AJ, Devontae, Covey are all guaranteed. Wilson is also guaranteed. That's 4. Paris Campbell's hardly played so far during training camp. I mean, he's been active the past couple of days, but this has not been a good training camp for Paris Campbell just from availability standpoint. If he's 5, then that means Anais Smith goes to practice squad. That means John Ross doesn't make this roster. And that obviously means that I'm blanking, Joseph Ngata doesn't make this roster as well. That is going to be the one position that I'm really keeping an eye on, because if they get rid of Paris Campbell, then suddenly it's like, okay, Ngata has a good Saturday. Does Ngata make it with back-to-back good preseason games? Does Anais Smith make it off the fact that he's had a pretty good week for the first time all training camp and is a 5th-round draft pick? What do you think happens with the wide receivers, 5th or 6th guy, depending on how many they keep?
Yeah, it's a fascinating question, and that's really one of the positions you are going to be watching. There's a couple of those, wide receiver being one. I agree with Tyler's comment there also of the thinking they should keep, he even says maybe 7, but I think they should keep 6. I'm thinking 6 receivers, but it still comes down to, even Paris Campbell said it in a recent interview. He was like, hey, we're fighting for our jobs. Like, I've been injured, been out of it. There's an opportunity to go out there, but he does have to prove it. And, you saw some glimpses. And I think that if everyone's healthy and all things are equal, that Paris Campbell would probably still be your wide receiver 3 favorite right now. But he got injured, and Johnny Wilson asserted himself, and Britton Covey played well, and all these other guys. So I think that he has to go out there and at least show enough to where the Eagles go, okay, we thought this whenever we first got you. We needed to make sure and see this. And as long as there's no setbacks with an injury, and as long as there's nothing that goes like, oh my gosh, this guy, I don't know, if he's just not there basically, then okay,
right,
you have some concerns. But I think ultimately, as long as he goes out there and plays, a decent, solid game for a preseason, however many snaps that ends up being, which that'll also be telling too. I mean, keep an eye out for how long they play, because it's like oh hey, Paris Campbell fighting for a job, and if he plays one series and then they're like, hey, we're going to take him out, then there's your answer, he's going to make the roster. But if he's playing significant snaps well into the game, then you may have a different scenario. But I do feel like it's the same deal. It's like, okay, you have AJ Brown, Devontae Smith, Johnny Wilson, Britton Covey, there's your 4. And then if you're gonna, I think it's 6, but if it's 5 to 6, I mean, I'm thinking Paris Campbell for 5 and 6. I still, as difficult of a camp as he's had, he has been coming on late. You talked about Aniyah Smith. He made a couple great grabs. He's had some confidence. I think that he sneaks on there for 6.
Okay.
Tyler's saying, and I've seen other people saying Aniyah being the odd man out, but if he gets cut, and you asked that question initially, like, okay, who is on the bubble of getting cut or making the roster? I think it's Aniyah Smith because of his potential. If he gets cut, I don't think that you could probably sneak John Ross onto the practice squad, right? Because John Ross has been out there as like, maybe he's got something, maybe not.
Yeah.
A lot of teams are going to be like, well, okay, he retired, he came back, he wasn't good enough to stay on the Eagles roster. Is he worth a flyer? Aniyah Smith is a wild card because you say, okay, he hasn't had a good camp, but he's a rookie, and he was a drafted rookie who's got some good tape out there, but he had the shin injury. And so the only thing that I could see outside of that is if Aniyah gets the IR designation, which we've seen that before too. But otherwise, if they're talking about just cut or make the roster, I think Aniyah still makes it.
Okay. Yeah, that it's going to be very hard, I think, to just fully go off of Aniyah Smith just based on 4 weeks of essentially having him with the rest of the roster. I mean, he threw in minicamp OTAs, didn't really practice because he's been dealing with that lower body injury. It'd be surprising. It's just you wonder where it goes. And Jamarcus Monroe just said, why do we keep sleeping on Joseph Ngata? I tend to agree. If Joseph Ngata plays well on Saturday, it's going to be very surprising to see them cut him. Now, again, practice squad is fine, but he was on the practice squad last year, and he basically never did anything. I know that you have incredible receivers in front of him, but he feels like somebody coming out of Clemson who just kind of needs that chance, just kind of needs to have the option to go ahead and be out there, and maybe he can make something of it. The problem is, again, there's a lot of people ahead of him, and Covey has to make the roster. He's been really good so far during training camp. He's going to take that next step, and Johnny Wilson's the same way. So, and God is just in a tough spot. The same goes for Eli Ricks. He got an interception today of Kenny Pickett. He hasn't been, I would say, as flashy as he was last year, whether that's the fact he's not played as well or the fact there are so many other cornerbacks, Williams, Keely Ringo, Isaiah Rodgers ahead of him. That probably makes a little bit more sense. But he's just somebody that's not going to make it, and he's not going to be on this Eagle roster. Practice squad, normal 53, both of them, because another team is going to be needing cornerback help, and they're going to go get Eli Ricks. There's no way they keep Eli Ricks on this roster because they're only going to keep, 5 cornerbacks, depending on how many they want to have. And again, Eli Ricks will be a casualty. He will go somewhere else, and he will probably be a pretty good player. It's a bummer, but it's the result of having Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean and Keely Ringo and Isaiah Rodgers, who all need to be on a roster ahead of him.
Yeah, there's a ton of depth. I mean, you said it, but if maybe there's you'd have to take 7, but then you just keep on going around. And that's the fascinating part about cutdown days is you look at this roster and there's guys that are still playing for their spots. If Ricks were to have a phenomenal game on Saturday, I mean, I guess I wouldn't say it's impossible, but he would have to play a ridiculous game, and Howie might be able to swing a trade possibly too. Like, hey, look at there. Look at what he could do. Maybe you make a trade there for a receiver if they're not sold on that. So then all of a sudden you have a different question for the wide receiver spot. But I mean, he is one of those guys that you talk about is on the bubble, needs to make some plays, has to kind of, I guess, reprove it because of the secondary depth and everything that we have there. But yeah, I mean, you certainly want to see that. It's interesting too, because, we if you're mentioning the secondary, it's like it seems like a foregone conclusion, which is kind of crazy just based on what we've heard, or I guess the difference of what we've heard versus the speculation beforehand. But like James Bradberry seems like
I think he is.
All right. Well, I mean, it seems like he's going to be there. A lot of people would be arguing that that's a waste of roster spot. So if we mention other guys out here, that's possibility. But so far from the fact that you still need a backup safety of sorts, and you have a guy who at least owns up to his mistakes. I mean, give James Bradberry credit for that. I don't know how necessarily that helps you in an actual winning of a football game, but you appreciate the character that he has. And Sidney Brown is probably going to be a return after the bye week at this point. I mean, it seems like, because he makes the IR, then it's 4 weeks. You have the bye week on the 5th week. So week 6 would be when Sidney Brown comes back. So, that's also kind of surprising. You have James Bradberry there. That seems like a given. I would not have expected that. I did not think that would be happening.
Tyler Wallace says, I feel a little upset if we cut Patrick Johnson. I want to see him actually be useful other than practice and preseason. I agree. I think Patrick Johnson, he's probably had one of the better training camps of all of the bubble players, right? And, Jalyx Hunt is another player in a similar boat in terms of, skill and how much he can actually contribute. But Hunt's a third-round draft pick. He's locked into the roster. Patrick Johnson has been a practice squad guy for basically since we picked him up or drafted him a couple of years back, but he has had a very, very good training camp. And again, you wonder how it fits in there, but I think he has to make the roster. Same goes for a guy like Moro Jomo. He's had an incredible training camp so far. There have been a couple of guys entering camp very much on the bubble who have been incredible, and I think Patrick Johnson is definitely one of them.
Yeah, he's different. I mean, I think Andrew DeCecco had the first article, and then a lot of other writers started having more follow-ups on Patrick Johnson and his ability to make plays. We naturally saw it in the games, but kind of get the behind the scenes of him putting in the extra work and adding the moves to his repertoire. And, we've seen it in higher leverage. Granted, yes, it's preseason, but higher leverage situations in a preseason game for him to show up and make plays. So I think it is. You've got the ability on the special teams. I think defensive tackle, if we're talking about a guy that was completely off of most people's radar, certainly mine, but is very much a possibility, is Thomas Booker. I mean, when you look at the game tape and then also on practice, what he's doing in one-on-ones and different drills, it's a guy that was drafted by the Texans, didn't make the roster, got cut, and from Stanford, got picked up by the Eagles here. But I think the natural inclination was like, okay, it's going to be Marlon Tuipulotu, or it's maybe going to be Gabe Hall for that potential spot if they, keep an extra interior defensive lineman. But based on the play, I mean, I think he's got to be right up there because sure, Marlon's had a few, and you might make the question of, okay, do you want him because he does have that seniority? He's been with the team, with the squad. But the counter argument to that is like, okay, yeah, but it's Vic Fangio in here now. Like, Marlon wasn't there with Vic, so Vic's completely resetting this thing. And if Thomas Booker continues to play the way that he has, I would certainly look for him on Saturday. If he has like another sack or he has another game where it's just kind of like, all right, he's clogging the running lanes, he's getting pressure on the quarterback, I think it might be a foregone conclusion at that point. And Thomas Booker's your other interior D lineman that makes the roster.
No, it's a great point. It's something that we don't talk a lot about during training camp. Just, there's only so many people flashing. And when A.J. Brown makes a one-handed catch, we focus in on that versus your 4th or 5th string defensive tackle doing something. But he has had a very good camp. And the Eagles are in a spot where, I mean, just, again, even last year, it was like Josh Jobe is going to make the roster because we need him, and maybe he can do something in the regular season. Eli Ricks was the same way, and they both had to play. And this year, it seems like they've really struck gold on a lot of these major needs. I think linebacker, I saw someone mention, I think it was Tyler Ben Van Sumeren. I don't think he makes this roster. He's for sure a practice squad guy. He's had a pretty good camp. He's not been bad.
You don't think
so?
I think he's
how many
sure.
linebackers? Are you going to keep 5?
Yeah. Yeah, you're going to keep 5.
Well, then he does at number 5. If it was 4, then I see him in practice squad.
I mean, I love Jeremiah Trotter Jr., don't get me wrong, but Ben Van Sumeren, BVS, is the best special teams player for the Eagles. So I don't think there's a way that you cut him.
That's fair. That's fair.
Yeah. But then I'm keeping 5, and then, granted, the math, I would need like a spreadsheet to go through and see like who am I cutting, who am I keeping, but just off the top of my head, I'm keeping 5 linebackers, and that keeps BVS there.
All right. Well, if we keep 5, then for sure. If we don't, then he would be let go, and he would be immediately signed to their practice squad because, like you said, they really like him, and he's done a very.
Well, I think Sirianni learned from his mistake of still whether or not Ben Van Sumeren ever becomes a starting or even like a really good backup linebacker in this league. the fact that him admitting to the Christian Ellis mistake, because Christian Ellis was a good special teams player,
right,
going like, yeah, well, 9 teams claimed him as soon as you let him go. That just tells you one thing there. So I think similar to that effect, you go, hey, Ben Van Sumeren is a really athletic dude who can make tackles, and he's really all over the field in terms of special teams, especially. So I think that it's a, I don't know, maybe he learned from his mistakes. Hopefully he did. That's the goal anyway.
Obviously, we'll find out Monday or Tuesday. Is Tuesday officially cut day? I believe it is. It is Monday or Tuesday. It is
the 27th. Okay. Yep,
that is good to know. I wanted to make sure I had the date set up right there as well. Tyler Walsh said 11 is a lot. Oh, he's talking about. I thought he was talking about roster spots. He's talking about sacks for Jalen Carter. Yeah, I mean Jalen Carter's had a great camp. There's very few Eagles that you can point to who've had a bad camp. There's been a couple who've been a little quiet, but I mean, AJ Devontae's had a great camp. Kenny Gainwell has had apparently a very impressive camp. I mean, Jalen Hurts mentioned that today during his press conference. Of course, Gainwell filled in for load management Saquon Barkley. Quinyon Mitchell, Josh, I mean, I knew he was going to be good. You and I both wanted him going into the draft. You had said, like your pick is Quinyon Mitchell. It's got to be Quinyon Mitchell, and yet we got to trade up to get him, and then we didn't. I said today on my show, I don't know if there's been an Eagles rookie that's looked this ready to go. And Devontae Smith looked very ready to go in his first training camp, but even Devontae Smith's rookie year, it was like he's gonna be great. He's very good right now, but he's not one of the elite wide receivers in the National Football League year 1, and then year 2, 3, going into year 4, he's gonna be fantastic, right? I mean, definitely top 10. I don't know if Q's top 10 right now. I mean, what am I, like, we need to see him actually play. But he seems so ready to play in the NFL coming out of Toledo that every day I see these matchups where we're getting footage or we're getting camp reports or, sideline updates of Q versus AJ or Q versus Devontae Smith, and then listening to those players rave about Quinyon in press conferences. I don't see how this kid doesn't turn out to be one of the great Eagle cornerbacks in the past 20 years, because we haven't had that many overall. There was a long stretch before Darius Slay where it's like, where are all the great cornerbacks? I think if you have to pick one player who's won training camp, there's a couple we can talk about. I think it's been Quinyon Mitchell.
You're right. It's been, a long time. I can't remember, what was it, like the 20 years since the first round pick of a corner?
Shepard and
since
Brown,
Lito Shepard.
Guess, right?
Yeah. So just an eternity of that happening. So it was a breath of fresh air for one, but the fact that, he's making plays, it's, I think that we brought this up, or maybe we talked about it a little bit a couple shows prior, or maybe whenever we were, getting into training camp and hearing a little bit of the rumblings about Q and his potential, right? And AJ, kind of the smack talk back and forth. But Q, in a sense, it kind of gives me the vibes of last year with Jalen Carter, but like this is just for the cornerback position, because we had like all that hype of Jalen Carter, and you heard the reporters. I can't remember, because I think that Zach Berman's asked a couple questions, but there may be some other reporters that asked the same thing of like, hey, who's going to stand out this year, right? Like, give me an idea. Who's your one pick? Who's going to surprise some people? And Lane Johnson and Jason Kelsey and a couple others, it was immediate. It's Jalen Carter. And you don't hear vets like that pointing to Jalen Carter unless you really believe in his ability and to make plays. And obviously, it was from day one, in preseason, in the regular season. Now I know that he hit the rookie wall, but outside of hitting the rookie wall, when he was healthy, when he was fresh, you could see it. You're like, okay, this dude's a game wrecker. Like, he just needs to have that ability to play more snaps. He's got a ton of tools. I mean, you could almost say he's got all the tools, and you just got to refine him just a little bit. So it reminds me a lot on that side. Again, I also kind of want to temper it maybe slightly, because it's like, okay, the dude's just a rookie. Like, we don't want to just go ahead and dub him as like, oh my gosh, he's going to be the future all-pro cornerback. But you're right. I still get those vibes from it. And if we're going to look and say, like, who do you want to train him to be better at, right? Like, a lot of times you see the youth or the depth on certain teams, they end up becoming really great because you have all those matchups and one-on-ones in practice every single day. And, there's not another team in the league that's getting their corners as good of reps as the Eagles are, because you have the duo of AJ Brown and Devontae Smith. There's not an off matchup. Like, on a lot of other teams, you can say, okay, well, hey, if you guard the team's number one receiver, you better be on. But, you can kind of let up a little bit on number two. You have 1A and 1B. And with Devontae having a crazy camp and AJ having an incredible camp and being, virtually unguardable, especially with slant routes over the middle, it's a trial by fire. It's a learn on the job, and Q's getting it, but he's also made some plays too, which is great. So
Yeah.
I'm with you. I'm very excited to see. I'm interested. How quickly will we get that adjustment? Like, it would be kind of surprising to me, but we're even hearing reports now of like, are we going to get Q playing on the outside in the base defense? And then like, oh, hey, we're going to the nickel package in the game and say, oh, Q, just go ahead and move over. If you see that, I mean, that just tells you everything. There's already tons of hype. But if we see that in Brazil, I mean, we'll be like, all right, well, Fangio to do that is speaking volumes.
No, I totally agree. And like you said, nickel, you obviously have Isaiah Rodgers out there who will be the other outside cornerback. Quinyon would be the nickel. But if you're in a base defense, if you have, your 4 or whatever it is, your 3 and your 2, and then your 2 and then your 2 or whatever, then Quinyon maybe, although they brought Isaiah back to being the base defense starting outside corner today. So, that's a TBD thing. I guess we'll find out, a couple Fridays from now whenever we kick off the season down there in Brazil. I think the other player I have to at least mention, I said this on my show 2 days ago, I was very wrong on Nakobe Dean. I was very wrong on Nakobe Dean early on in training camp. It was looking like the reports were saying he's struggling in coverage and he's missing tackles and he's just not looking good. And it was like, wow, here comes Jeremiah Trotter Jr. Nakobe Dean has had a very good past couple of weeks and 2 really good preseason games where he has been the highest graded Philadelphia Eagle defensive player according to Pro Football Focus, higher than Avonte Maddox, who had the Eagles' only turnover in terms of interceptions during the preseason. He's been good. Now, is he going to turn out to be as great as we think Q's going to be? No. Is he even going to get the starting spot originally from Zach Bond? That's to be determined. We'll see. But I do think that Nakobe Dean entered this training camp with the most pressure of probably any Eagle heading into 2024. He had to make the roster. He had to be really good. And I think he's proven that he belongs here and will get his opportunities. Vic Fangio was asked about it a couple days ago, would you consider linebacker by committee? He said, I've done it in the past. It's not preferred. But I do think with the giant question mark that Zach Bond is, just from overall lack of playing time there, Dean, I think, has done enough to at least be nipping at the heels of Zach Bond and potentially be a guy who gets a lot more starting playing time, maybe not week 1, but further on down the year. He's been good, and I admitted 2 days ago, I'll say it again, I've been wrong on Nakobe Dean.
And there you go. Cheesesteak says, right on, Thomas. Thank goodness for the Dean turnaround. So, that's a lot of it because
really
we've seen it is because you're hoping for it. You wanted to see it. And finally you started to, which is great. I don't know. I'm with you on the sense of Nakobe's very close. And so Zach Bond probably will not have a very long leash with Vic Fangio. If there's some mistakes or there's some, areas where he's not able to really cover like you wanted him to. Certainly within like run defense. Coverage for me is kind of like, I don't know, because even with Nakobe Dean taking those next steps, he made a few good coverage plays, but that's the constant of, he may just be so-so for his entire career. Now he may be improve in that area, but he's kind of more so been known as that run defense blitzer, the thumper, as I think Devin White had described him. So, the fact that you have that ability there, but yes, if Zach Bond, I mean, for sure, if Bond's missing tackles or he's not performing well in the blitz or something like that, I mean, that'll be an automatic, okay, get Nakobe Dean in there. And I think that'll happen really quickly. I'm also still of the same mindset. Maybe this is just a traditional way of thinking, but I'm of the same mindset of what Fangio said. It's like, I would prefer, like, hopefully it's 2 guys that solidify themselves. Devin White is kind of the lock that you're not even questioning at all. But then, it's like, is it Zach Bond? Is it Nakobe Dean? I really want 2 of them to assert themselves and be like, nope, it's the for sure starters, because I want that consistency. I don't know if that's just like the PTSD from last year of going like, oh, hey, look at this. You just got the revolving door of slot corner and revolving door of linebacker. Pick up somebody off the street, Oh, well, he wants to go be a plumber. So maybe not. But hopefully you land on those 2. And then you just have some more of the depth. But it is promising, like you said, with Nakobe taking that next step. He looks like he's got, I know they always say it, like I got a chip on their shoulder, but Nakobe, like he feels that way. It's like you listen to his press conference, you see the way that he's been playing, especially in the last couple of games. It's like he's going out there to win a job. And it's promising, regardless of if he gets the job over Zach Bond or not. I think that you have that extra fire, and that's what you want.
I totally agree. Let's quickly reset on the Fantasy Football League because we have about 530 people hanging out tonight. Hit the thumbs up button if you guys are watching right now. We appreciate that.
Appreciate
if you're
the
just joining us, we're doing right now, as of now, 1 Fantasy Football League. We did it last year with 2. Myself and Josh are going to be both in a 16-person ESPN standard PPR fantasy league. The price for admission is down in our description box. It's $105. It's a lot because we're trying to get 14 of you guys who are going to actually play, actually show up for the draft, which is going to be next Wednesday during the live stream, 7:45 Eastern time. And so to do it, you Venmo myself or Josh. All the info's in the description box to get the spots. If we get enough for 32, we'll do a second league, but we just want to start with 16. I have 3 people locked in. We'll send you emails probably tomorrow. Ethan, Devin, and Michael have all Venmo'd me, and so you guys are locked in terms of the Fantasy Football League. So that leaves us, because Josh and I are in this league, 5. So it leaves us with 11 slots. And I believe other people have Venmo'd you too, Josh. So
yes. Yep. I was going to say, I've got one from Edwin, and I'm checking the Venmo as well. I sent an email for people, so I've got some of those. And then I've got...
You should have Tyler. He's saying he's Venmo'd.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think I saw that notification come through. Let's see here. We've got a Tyler, Akeem, Clavon, I'm sorry if I pronounced that wrong, and Fong, I think. So yeah, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4,
Venmo,
5.
5, and so we have 8. So we have basically 6 slots left. So it's going to be close. Yeah, and Warv is saying 16 teams is insane. It is insane. It's really hard. I normally play like my own personal, like friends and family one is a 12-person league, and that's hard. 16 is brutal, but it makes it more fun because it's like you're trying to figure out how to build a roster with people when you're drafting like number 1 overall and then you're drafting 32nd overall. Like it's crazy. So,
yes, you got to be very talented to win this thing. As I was the winner of the inaugural Fantasy Football League. So we just throw that one out there as always. But if you do win it, then, you it's a very sizable pot naturally, because you can see the prize there, 105. I think the payout was,
I think second place gets their money back, right? Isn't that how we did it last year?
Yeah, and I believe so. Yeah.
Okay. So
Andrew, the buy-in is 105.
Venmo.
Or Antonia's asking, Venmo is the best. The details are in the description there for Venmo handles. If you need email will work. Preference of Venmo because I can keep it all there, but that's
Jay just said he just sent his email.
I've got Jay's. Okay, yep. So it looks like we've got 5 spots left, I believe.
Okay, it's gonna be filled. This is why people are like
super
it's gonna
quick.
Fill quick. Yeah, it's gonna fill very quick. If you're watching this later, and you send a Venmo and we're already full, we'll either expand or we'll just send
keep
you
it.
your money back.
We'll send you back. You will
1,000 people Venmo us. We just
I don't know what happened to the funds.
Sorry.
Appreciate all the support, guys. You will get your money back if it's full.
Matt C says, I prefer to play fantasy football without other Eagle fans. I agree with that to the point that, like, AJ's going to go too high. Jalen will go too high. It's kind of annoying, but, come on, we're all Eagle fans here. And, again, that's why the money is so high, because that way you're buying in, being serious here.
It is very difficult because, quite honestly, whenever we play all these leagues, every single time, without fail, there is one Dallas Cowboys player who, just slips to a much later time.
Because we don't want him. Yes.
Seriously, CeeDee Lamb was in one of the leagues that I did earlier, and CeeDee Lamb was in, the 10th or 11th spot.
Wow.
And I was like, I've got to take it. I don't want to take him, but it's impossible to, right? Yeah. So, you just got to go ahead and draft him.
Yeah.
And then I got to halfway, not cheer for him, but be glad that, if I win the league because of that, it's I totally get it.
Tyler says, is this league half PPR? What do you mean by half? It's just a standard PPR, right?
That's a good question. Yeah, we've always done standard. I've seen a couple of them pop up now where they're half PPR. Like Underdog, the standard Underdog is 0.5 for a reception. So I've started seeing those pop up.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
It'll be standard.
I think we're just doing the standard, yeah.
And it'll be a randomized snake draft. Like we'll do where ESPN picks the order an hour before the draft. So I know people are going to eventually
Josh will be first. Thomas will be 16.
No, I don't want to be first. I know that. I don't want to be first.
That's true. That's true.
You want to be right in the middle of a 16-team league. That's where you want to be. Right dead smack. 8 is the money spot. Because if you're first, oh, boy, you're getting Christian McCaffrey and, I don't know, Kirk Cousins, I guess, at the 32nd overall pick.
Good luck.
Fun. It's not fun.
Last on a 12-man league is bad enough.
Fun.
But, last on a 16 is good luck. Yeah, enjoy your wait. You got forever.
Brian Baldinger has a video showing Devin White playing well in the preseason. Donnie Four said that. He did. Devin White has played well in the preseason. And, Devin is still a question mark. There's a question mark of if Devin White turns into the All-Pro that he was almost 4 years ago now. But I don't think there's any sort of question Devin White's going to be solid this year. And that's really all you need. I mean, Philadelphia has had solid linebackers in the past. They haven't had elite linebackers. I mean, T.J. Edwards, the closest in recent history that we've had, but he wasn't a top 3 or 4 or 5 linebacker that year. There are still the Patrick Queens of the world, the Roquan Smiths of the world, the really, really good linebackers. So that's kind of where we're sitting, right? I mean, you're at a point where he's either going to be just fine, which is good, or he turns into an absolute monster, and that's what he claims he's going to be. Philadelphia hasn't had it in a long time, he said. If he turns out to be a great middle linebacker for the next 3 years in Philadelphia, the Eagles' defense is going to be incredible. It's going to be absolutely incredible this year. The same goes for Bryce Huff, Josh, who, again, slow start, not hearing much. Bryce Huff has come alive the past couple of weeks and had an incredible 14, 15-snap preseason game against the New England Patriots. He seems hungry to prove everybody that he is not just a gimmick third-down pass rusher who got lucky because he played next to Quinyon Williams. He is dead set on proving that he can be the next Hassan Reddick, and I'm pumped. I'm really excited.
Yeah, I am too, because I mentioned it in one of the videos after the joint practice, and especially kind of emphasizing it even more so after the game, because it's understandable, especially whenever your defensive coordinator comes right on and goes, yeah, he's not there yet, but we believe that he can get there. You don't expect to hear that. We haven't heard that much in the past, but certainly from a guy like Fangio, he's brutally honest, and it's refreshing, but it's also like, okay, it doesn't give you the warm and fuzzies about the guy that you just paid, the massive contract to hopefully replace Hassan Reddick. But yes, you've started to see that, and then the differences of, okay, he can play a little bit in coverage. There was especially a really good rep that he had in the Patriots game of starting to get blocked or looking like he was getting blocked. And then the lineman let him slip, right? Because it was a screenplay going out to the right side. In last year, if we're, looking at some of those games, I think the immediate thought would be like, oh, there's going to be just no contain, no staying to your assignment. It's just take off straight for the quarterback, and there you go. There's a screen pass, and they get a lot of yards. But Bryce Huff immediately turned because he saw it and he recognized it. He goes and gets the tackle. So that type of recognition, also the things in coverage, and then we've seen and heard some recent reports of his air quote sacks. They're not actually taking down Jalen, but he's still getting to the quarterback. So I'm excited. I think that this is going to be a positive year, especially for the pass rush. Also, shout out to Anthony. Got a text here, said he just joined. So I've got, I guess, another.
Is he going to be in our fantasy league?
I believe so. I'm refreshing this. He said he just joined. So.
Oh, man. The Thomas Mott, Josh Davis, Anthony DeBona Fantasy League is going to be very exciting.
I like that.
Okay. Gee, so what do we have? There was someone else who said, Antonio Holmes says he emailed you. He's waiting for his wife to come home because she has the Venmo. So that's another one. So you had 5, 6, 7. So we're 3 or 4 slots away from filling this thing. We might fill it on the stream. And then we
did not expect it to be that quickly.
We also could, if we got enough, we could split and do 2 12-person leagues. We'll see. But right now we're just focusing on the one league, depending on how many.
That's true. We can always do it. A separate one.
There you go. So Anthony DeBona, he's in. He's ready to rock.
Andrew asking about the underdog. Yes, underdog is different because there's others, but the one that we have is best ball. So there's not an ad drop. It's literally you draft and it optimizes your lineup each week. So there you go. It's a little bit different than just your standard. Oh, Andrew asking about Friday. Unfortunately,
can't.
We're trying to make sure that it works out for everybody's schedules and getting close to it. So that's where
How much is it? $500. $500. You guys playing on Sleeper or what? I don't know what that means. Sleeper. Is that a fantasy? Is that a fantasy thing?
Yeah. They've actually started having the Sleeper. I don't even know what to describe it as, but they've got an app, but there's also and you may have seen people on Twitter. They have little Sleeper emoji thing.
Yes.
Next to their
is it a fantasy
Yeah, so they have fantasy leagues for them too.
I see.
So
I see.
yeah,
I was like, what is that?
Started seeing
ESPN.
A couple of those.
We're doing ESPN, nice and simple. Mainly because my other leagues are on ESPN, so I don't want to be downloading multiple apps. So make that very clear.
Keeps it easy.
Pox says, is Steen a possibility of getting cut, Josh? No. They're definitely not going to cut Tyler
No,
Steen.
absolutely.
There's no chance.
No way. I guess I'll turn the question around on you a little bit. So Jimmy Kimsky threw out the idea of Tyler Steen being traded. Do you think that is even a remote possibility? But yes, he actually put together some just random. There's no official reports here, but just speculating. And he was saying like, oh, if Howie wanted to go out and get a wide receiver 3, what would it cost? All this other stuff. So he put together a mock trade of sorts with Indianapolis. And so the mock trade was trying to see, if you could get Tyler Steen or an interest for the Colts of Tyler Steen, and then trading for one of their receivers. And I'm drawing a blank now on who I saw that for. But either way, I don't know that you trade Steen because Stout's still high on him. Yeah. Not high enough. I get it because Mekhi Becton is going to be the right guard starter, but he's got some versatility too. You don't exactly know. It seems crazy to me, but it is being floated out there. He's not getting cut. We'll be for sure on that. He's not getting cut.
Right. No, yeah, he's not getting cut. Trading is one, he's injured right now, so making a trade for an injured player, which maybe the Eagles would tell them in terms of how bad he actually is, but he hasn't played in a long time. That's one thing, and you need depth, right? We mentioned this weeks ago on a Wednesday link where I was saying Howie's done a very good job of making sure that he is not one injury away from the season being over. He's had enough depth at cornerback to where if one goes down, there's 3 more. It's like a Hydra, ready to step in and replace. The same goes for running back. The same goes for maybe receiver. That's probably one of the areas, right? But they got a lot of safeties. Vontae Maddox, James Bradberry. I think that with the whole Mekhi Becton injury history, you got to have a plug-and-play starter ready to go behind him, and that's Tyler Steen. And Steen can also be a plug-and-play swing tackle, right? Let's say, heaven forbid, one of your tackles goes down, you can then move Steen back to his original position or move Becton back to his original position. So it's and Trevor Keegan's hurt right now. He's had a good preseason. But again, if you don't want to have a scenario where you are an 11, 12, 13-win team that suddenly has a Jason Peters-type injury and you got to throw Keegan in there to try to win a Super Bowl, it's like, okay, we're asking a lot here, even though he came from Michigan and has, again, had good tape. I would keep Steen, and I think the main reason you mentioned there is that Jeff Stoutland says this guy is really good, and if Jeff Stoutland thinks he's going to be really good, then that's good enough for me.
Totally, yep. And I appreciate Antonio. He said Alec Pierce. I was drawing the blank on the receiver, so that's who it was. So
I got someone else who just entered the league. Thomas Smiley says he Venmo'd. Thomas, I got your Venmo. So I'm up to 1, 2, 3, 4. I have 4 on my side, and you might have gotten another email. So let's just make sure we have the number set for our fantasy league. Again, drafting next Wednesday, 7:45 Eastern time. You got to be there to draft, okay? Josh B, did we talk how to join the fantasy league? No, but it's down in the description box. Or yes, we have, but it's down there. Venmo one of us, $105. That's the buy-in. Next Wednesday is going to be the draft. We're very close to being full right now. Standard PPR, ESPN Fantasy, Snake Draft randomized an hour before. Do you know how many you have?
I'm still at, looks like I've still got the same count as before. I've got, I've still got 5, 6, 7, 8 here.
So you have 8. I have 4. That's 12. You and me are 13 and 14, so there are 2 spots left.
Yep.
Since we're in this, and DeBone is in this as well. Okay. All right. Well, again,
he actually said I was misinterpreting the text. He had just joined the stream, so I think he's considering, but we don't have an official join yet from Mr. DeBone himself. So
gotcha.
It's all good, no pressure, but there's 2 spots left. So
Saquon says Becton limping around with a brace. That's apparently when he's healthy. That's been Becton's problem, has been staying healthy. So, he's had a good training camp, but can he stay healthy? That'll be the big question mark, and exactly why you keep Tyler Steen on the roster.
Greg saying Keegan has lots of potential. Looks good. He does.
Definitely does.
He's played really well. He had, 20? I think he had 27 pass rush snaps or something like that in the preseason game. 0 pressures. He hasn't allowed a pressure throughout the preseason. He's had some good plays, even in the run game. Speaking of Brian Baldinger earlier, also broke down some good film there. So you like it. He's injured. Hopefully nothing serious. Nothing crazy serious, because we would have heard that by now. But you just wonder if exact timeline there. But that's why you drafted him, to have a extra depth on that side. So got high hopes for Trevor Keegan. But again, when we look at this squad and we think about what their potential is, I think the general consensus and the common denominator is can they be healthy? Can they stay healthy? Because if you get hit by the injury bug and like a significant one, I think that's the ultimate derailer for the squad. And hopefully not. But the right guard spot has been the one so far that you're looking at throughout camp. And I'm like, it seems like every time the injury report comes up, you're like, okay, well, we're down a couple O linemen. Fortunately, as of right now, you would look at the squad and say, okay, it looks solid if everyone can stay healthy. But that's an if that we're always wondering about.
Always an if. Always an if. How do you guys feel about Tutu Atwell or Jonathan Mingo? I'm guessing that's for trades. I don't know. I don't see it happening. It just like we've talked about a couple of these receivers that Philadelphia could trade for. That I'm now drawing a complete blank on. Dotson from Washington, signing Michael Thomas. Who are the other two that I talked about on the show? Oh, they're both Texans. Obviously, Mekhi and Robert Woods. Mekhi is obviously the, there you go, Anthony DeBona's in. So he's just in the league fee. So we have one slot left.
Got it.
CK Legend, do you take anything other than Venmo? Do you have anything other than Venmo, Josh? CK wants to be our 16th person.
Yeah. Do you have Cash App or Zelle? I would take Zelle, I suppose.
Email Josh in his description box. Do that.
The Philly Special Show at gmail.com. Email me.
There you go. Shoot him an email. We'll see if you can be lucky number 16. Yeah, so Mekhi is obviously the name that everyone would want because Mekhi has the tremendous upside. I don't know if Houston gets rid of Mekhi because he's on a rookie contract. That's tough to do. Dotson is in a similar situation, but is Dotson going to play a bunch? That's a big question mark for the Washington Commanders with what they currently have on the roster. Michael Thomas is too darn old. Robert Woods makes some sense simply because Philadelphia tried to sign him a couple of off seasons ago. Like they wanted Robert Woods, and then it fell through and didn't make a lot of sense for them. And he wanted a bunch of money somewhere else. And so we'll see. CK Legend says Zell works. So there you go, CK. Just email Josh. He got his email in the chat, and then if you do it, then we'll get you, set up and good to go. I also don't really want. And then we're done. That's it. And then
all bets are off.
Winner take all minus $105. So because second place has to win some stuff too. I have no interest in Jalen Mills either, Josh. Like I would get it, but Sidney Brown's coming back. So the idea that you need Jalen Mills doesn't seem to make a bunch of sense to me.
No. C.J. Gardner-Johnson doesn't want him either.
I saw that.
So whatever we may say, but the fact that he says it there, I mean, that's you like the vibes of the team. You don't want to mess with it too much. Yes, you're trying to make it better, but he's got the confidence there. So I would take that.
Jacob Sports Media, he said, did he get the last spot? I didn't get a Venmo. If you did, then we're going to have one extra person, so someone's not going to make it, but we'll see. We're also going to have to wait and see.
Oh, I got Jacob's Venmo first. Yeah, Jacob counts. Yep.
Yeah. So then is Jacob in ahead of CK? I think he is, sadly.
Yeah, I don't have CK yet, unfortunately.
Yeah, because he was going to
I'm refreshing.
You and then
I just see the comment that said emailed, so I'm refreshing, but I've got Jacob's in first.
I think we got to go with that because he's actually sent money.
Yeah.
Which is 16. Unless a bunch of people watch this afterwards, and then we got to do a second one, but
yeah,
we'll keep him in the bullpen. How about that?
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Because
I'm refreshing, and I still don't see the email yet. I'm actually waiting for it.
But I haven't got an email either. So,
but like you said, if we get a lot of them, and people are watching this back on delay or whatever, you will either have your money returned or we'll figure something out. So
yep. And for everybody who's watching, sign up as soon as you get the emails. I think we'll send these tomorrow. I'll send mine tomorrow since it's going to be late when we jump off here shortly. As soon as you get it, sign up, make your team name. That way we know that you're like locked and loaded, because if it's a couple days, then we'll probably sub you out and send you your money back. So, it's how fantasy football always works. It's so fun being a commissioner. But either way. Okay.
It's a joy.
Couple more questions, and then we're going to wrap things up. We're already at the top of the hour, which is crazy. It's been a very fast hour so far. Let's see. Health's a big concern this year. Dickerson gets hurt a lot, although plays. If Keegan hurt too, some other than side. Becton Same on the other side with Becton and Steen. I think that's probably the idea, again, in terms of trying to make sure that you have the depth. Keegan has been playing mainly left guard. It's his natural position, so he's your Dickerson backup. And then Steen has been playing mainly right guard, so he's your Becton backup. And then you have some pretty solid people there if the worst were to happen. And like they said, both of those people, in terms of Dickerson and Becton, have been injured at points during training camp, and so you have yourself a little bit of coverage, which I think makes sense.
For sure. Yeah. You definitely want the extra depth on the O-line because even being, relatively healthy for the most part last season, you still saw it with the Sua Opeta coming in and Tyler Steen coming in. That was more so with Juergens. But yeah, you can never have too much depth, I would say, especially within that O-line spot. So I will be curious also, we talk about in the preseason game, guys to watch. Some of the O-linemen, guys that are going to be trying to fight for that spot, making the roster on that side. Who's going to be the depth there? That's an interesting one to me. I think that, certainly the biggest highlight is going to be watching Cooper DeJean. The fact that he said he's expecting to play. He's excited. Probably going to be starting the nickel would be my guess.
I was going to ask you that.
Does he play in other spots? That's what I'm going to be fascinated to watch because ultimately I think long term, even the glimpses that we've seen, the thought is probably, okay, Q eventually is long-term outside corner, staying outside, and then Coop plays in the nickel. Now, maybe you could say, well, he's got a lot of other versatility, and I am going to be interested to see where Fangio uses him. But if he can quickly pick that up, then all of a sudden you might go, well, okay, he's your nickel. Because I think what it spoke to also is like Fangio made the comments in the pressers, right? And he's going, well, we'd prefer to have Q on the outside. We don't really have that ability to. That may not be a luxury for us. So it's kind of like, all right, well, you don't just love the idea then of Avonte Maddox playing in the slot because he was initially, and now it's all been Q.
Yeah.
And it's almost like he was inferring that it's Coop possibly, if he can show up and play well in that role, then that'll help move Q to a strictly outside role. But I don't know. It'll be interesting to see. I'm definitely looking forward to watching Coop play.
Someone said earlier you could not keep Bradberry, so he's got to get canned. James Bradberry is going to make this roster. I'd be shocked if they cut him. He has been backup safety basically the entire 3.5, 4 weeks we've been in training camp. If they were going to cut him, he'd be further down the roster. They were going to trade him, they would have traded him, and if he knew he was getting traded, but they didn't have a deal yet, he might be sitting out of practice. None of that's been the case. Like, it seems he's going to be the guy. So, do with that as you will. Let's see. Fred Johnson versus Becton is back up to Mailata. Becton's starting at right guard. So I think Fred Johnson makes this roster, or at least makes a practice squad in terms of how many you want to keep on the offensive line. But no, Becton is going to be is definitely going to be the starting right guard. Guys, you two do a good job, says ROG. Are you going to Brazil? We are not going to Brazil. We'll be live, just like we are right now, for the broadcast.
We'll be virtually in Brazil.
Peacock. There you go. We will be going to a couple games this year. We don't know which ones yet, but it will be at a couple games. We'll let you guys know. We always hang out with our good friends who tailgate. I forget what section they tailgate at, but Mike and Lamb will be tailgating there. I'll have you guys come over, say hi. So you'll be able to find us at an Eagles game this year. Don't worry about that. Even though we both don't live in Philadelphia, in case you didn't know, in Atlanta and enemy territory for Dallas for that guy over there. But we can forgive him for that. So
it's behind enemy lines. So it's a joy to hear all of the radio and live shows and everything else going over here because they're upset and they've got a quarterback play and a GM owner who's doing nothing. It's a joy. It's a lot of fun. But I agree. I think Fred Johnson, he's solid. He's made, I guess, a lot of impressions certainly, but I think as far as a backup, should be really solid. And then also one comment I think I saw earlier from who was that? Jay. I'll email back for the people that emailed that have the Zelle option. I'll just email you directly. Don't send money to that email. That won't work. So I'll email you.
There you
go. I'll give you more details for the league.
There you go. Yeah, you will be getting, whether you Venmo'd or whether you are emailing Josh to his future Zelle, you'll be getting your invite here in terms of actually to the league sometime by noon tomorrow. I'll do it first thing in the morning, but by noon tomorrow. So is what it is. Jordan says, damn, how many Eagles shirts do you boys have? I have one for at least every week because I do a show about every day. So, You see them rotated on our shows. We got quite a few Eagle shirts. Yeah.
Add to the arsenal. That's where it is.
That's right. Maybe more coming in the future. We'll see. So,
ooh, he's there. Hang on.
You never know.
Look out now.
We got. You can never have too many Eagle shirts. Can never have too many Eagle shirts.
That's definitely true. I would agree.
Very true. Very true. Yeah, I basically don't wear normal shirts because I do an Eagle show almost every single day. So whenever I am not doing an Eagle show, I always try to wear my non-Eagle shirts because I wear these things like crazy, and they're the only things that go into the wash. But,
I think that's the way that Sandy feels too. She's like, literally, the only thing that's being washed are Eagle shirts. So
it's true. What are you gonna do?
It's not a bad problem to have.
Not a bad problem to have. All right, well, we're at the top of the hour. We appreciate you guys hanging out here. Those of you guys who've joined our Fantasy Football League, we'll keep you guys updated on that. Thanks for sending those Venmos and the emails and stuff. We'll make sure you guys get in the league. Again, we'll draft next week, 7:45, so we'll start the live at 7:30. Let people kind of trickle in. We'll do a normal live on next Wednesday, but we'll also have the draft going on, so we'll have fun with that as well. And again, stay tuned for plenty of shows. Preseason game, which, Josh, we are officially not doing the preseason broadcast on Saturday because you are out, right? We want to announce that now.
Yeah, good point. Yeah, correct. I will be at a CrossFit competition, so unfortunately will not be able to.
So jacked and swole. Look at this guy. CrossFit competition. Yeah.
Okay. Well,
didn't plan that very well, did you? But, I remember you telling me about this. We didn't realize it was on the Eagles' final preseason game. So we'll have recaps of that. We'll have recaps, but not live during.
Recaps will go up, but no, that was a bad planning on my. I literally was like, because my brother's like, hey, you want to do the CrossFit competition? Oh yeah, sure. It didn't even look at all with the schedule because I was like, oh, it's in August, it'll be fine.
Sure.
I should have been, more cognizant. I think it's because I knew it was on a Saturday, and in my head I was like, oh yeah, it's not on a Sunday.
Saturday afternoon games that we had.
Preseason, I forgot. I'm like, oh well, okay, of course, yeah, they play preseason on Friday and Saturdays. Yeah. So yes, but
it'll be fun.
Unfortunately, we'll be back for Brazil, and that's gonna be a blast. It'll be a big hangout watching the Eagles beat my wife's family's Packers.
Gosh, let's hope.
It'll be just so awesome.
1-0 versus 0-1. Big difference. So
Tyler says Olympic 2028 Josh. Maybe so.
Know.
If that one dude is apparently better than Patrick Mahomes at quarterback, then I guess I got a chance. So
can you imagine? Be on the flag football team. Just like the good old days.
Oh yes. Bring back the days at Baylor. Baylor intramurals versus Olympics. Yeah,
that's right.
Probably
it's the same thing.
Probably correlates there.
It's pretty the same
good,
thing.
But
it's the longest anyone who does CrossFit did mention they do CrossFit, says Brian. Yeah, Josh is not someone who tells you he does CrossFit. He's one of the rare ones. But yeah, he is now he said it, and now thousands of people are going to know that you do CrossFit. So
okay, yeah.
There you go. It happens.
It's I'm terrible about posting. Everybody knows that, but like I don't post on Instagram like ever. Like I'm kind of like creeping in the comments and like liking some posts by other people, but I get onto or I'm told quite a bit from Sandy like, oh yeah, you didn't post that, or I'm like I'm sorry, I just
same way.
I don't get on it a whole lot to begin with, and then especially whenever it's like, oh hey, do you want to post something? So randomly it'll happen, but
there you go.
That's what it is. But I won't be here. I apologize to those people. So
all right,
you will get game recap.
For CrossFit guy Josh Davis, I'm Thomas Mott. As we go ahead and sign off, we will see you guys next Wednesday. Hope you guys enjoy the rest of your Wednesday evening. See you guys.
There you go. Go Birds.